Order now.
Now let's meet our authority on black genealogy in America.
Number one, what is your name, please?
My name is Alex Haley.
Number two.
My name is Alex Haley.
Number three.
My name is Alex Haley.
And here is the affidavit of Alex Haley. It's fascinating. It says, I, Alex Haley, am the only black American to have successfully traced his ancestry back 9 generations to its African origin. My 7-year search included examining cargo lists from slave vessels, as well as 19th century newspaper advertisements concerning slave auctions. Ultimately, my quest took me to a tiny village on the Gambia River in Africa. There, I reconstructed the life of one of my seventh generation ancestors from birth to his U.S. slavery. Actually, my story is much more than the story of one family. In effect, I have charted the history of every black American. I say this because every one of us is directly descended from some African who was taken from his homeland, dragged to America, chained in the hold of a ship, and callously sold as a slave. Signed, Alex Haley. And we'll start the questioning, please, with Kitty Carlisle.
Thank you. Mr. Haley, number one, this is an extraordinary amount of work, I'm sure. Did the people who came from Gambia, did they have a sort of one family name, or did they all have different names?
They had different names.
But were there like clans? Was there a family name?
Clan surnames.
Clan surnames. And number two, is it true that not all the people who came from Africa were sold by the whites? Some of their own people, and sometimes the Muslims sold them.
That's true, especially on the East Coast.
On the East Coast.
On the West Coast, most was kidnapped into slavery.
I see. Thank you. Number three, when you finally found this seventh generation, what was he doing when you? What's his life then? The seventh generation ancestor in Gambia.
What is his life?
What had he been doing there? Yes. Was he a farmer? Was he?
You mean his vocation?
Yeah. What was he doing?
Oh well, he carved certain art pieces.
Oh, I see. Number one, is that where many of the African art carvings come from?
Well, carvings come from all across West Africa, really.
I see.
Thank you, Kitty, and we go down to Tom.
Number two, just to pursue something that you said in answer to a question of Kitty's, who were the kidnappers? Was there a group that could be identified as those kidnappers on the West Coast?
On the West Coast, most were Arabs. They come into the colonies to raid the villages, take away suspects there.
And then they found, number one, a ready market in wherever any place that they needed cheap labor, right?
Right. I happened to trace my ancestry because he happened to be out one day cutting wood, and that's how it came about.
Number one, I think it's a disgrace in the history of mankind. And would it be possible, number one, for other people perhaps to trace their ancestry?
You mean other black people?
Other black people in this country?
If they had certain clues, it would be possible.
See, one reason that I ask about the difficulty, number three, those cargo manifests were very often very skimpy, were they not, number three?
Yes, there were. But
And that takes us, please, to Peggy Cass.
Thank you. Number one, were all slaves shipped to America?
No, they were not.
What other places were they shipped to?
To the West Indies, to South America, predominantly Brazil.
Uh-huh. Okay, now, number two, what was your family name in Africa?
Kiki-Tonga.
Kiki-Tonga? That's a cute name. What's your... number three, is Gambia where you were... the president's country of Gambia, is that where you were from?
Yes.
I see. Now, number one, what was the name of the ship that your ancestor came over here on?
The Lord Ligonier.
Lord Ligonier. Gee, number two, how long did it take you to research this? It must have just taken you your whole life.
That's true. Altogether about 7 years.
Uh-huh. Number three, you going to write a book about it?
Yes.
Have you written... It's not out yet.
It's started, but it's not published yet. It's not finished.
I see. Now, number one, how did you know that he went out to cut wood one day and never came back? I mean, did they keep, I mean, I don't know, 7 generations ago, mine were maybe drowning in some bog somewhere, but there's no record. How come that they remembered that? Is there...
It was part of oral history, a story which was told down across generations.
Mm-hmm. I see.
And finally, we go to Gene Rayburn.
Yes. Number 2, you're a progenitor who was sold into slavery, came to this country, right? And where in this country?
He landed in Annapolis, Virginia, and the records were easily accessible because the ships would log in the alcohols in D.C.
And number 2, where are you from?
Now, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, where were you born and raised?
In North Carolina.
Yeah. Number 1, how much was this fella sold for? Is that in the records anywhere?
Not specifically, but in that state at that time, it would have been between $750 and $800.
Number 2, now we've identified the Gandia River area, but we don't, what is that country presently?
The Gambia River.
The Gambia.
Right.
Now, what is it? Is
It's Gambia.
The country is Gambia,
right.
yes. And what are the people called there?
Well, you got the Mandingo tribe is the
Yes.
biggest, and the capital is Bathurst.
Mm-hmm. And number 2, where were your progenitors brought when they were they also brought to Maryland? Yes. And where were you? Yeah. And how about you? Where were you raised, number 3?
Virginia.
In Virginia?
Yes.
So they stayed there in that area.
All right, there goes the bell. No more conjecture. It's time for us to decide. Is it number 1? Is it number 2? Is it number 3? I think we know what the penalties are. We'll skip that. Is everybody marked up?
Beating.
All right, then let's go to Kitty, please.
Well, I think it's a remarkable story, and I voted for number 1 because it looks to me like he's a man who has enough continuity of thought and purpose to have pursued it for 7 long years.
So we got to vote for a 1, and Tom, you seem to be...
No, I had no hesitation about voting for number 1, except that number 2 is a swell swindler. I would believe him no matter what he told me. That guy's all right.
And we've got a pair of 1s showing that. What are you going to do, Peggy?
Well, I'd buy a used car from number 2, but I voted for number 1.
All right, I'm the only guy on this panel who's putting his money where his mouth is.
All right, where's your mouth,
My
friend?
mouth is at number 2. He's the one. I don't know what's wrong with you folks. Boy, are you dumb
Oh, I
today?
don't know.
All right, the votes are all in. Will the real Alex Haley please stand up, sir? There's Alex. Thank you, Mr. Haley. We'll be back to you in a moment for something truly remarkable, a great picture we want to show you. Number 2, tell us about yourself.
My name is Robert Cook. I'm on the advisory committee for the New York Bank for Savings.
And number 3, what about you?
I'm Russ Douglas, and I'm a technical representative for Xerox Corporation.
Oh, good. Now, Mr. Haley, you told us about how you had traced your family back to Africa, and then you went back there yourself and were able to make a remarkable photograph. Paul, let's see the photograph first. Now, who is the old gentleman in the caftan?
They would call it Dundico.
Dundico?
But it would have that.
Mm-hmm.
The man's name is Keba Kanga Fofana. He is by profession a griot. It's spelled Griot.
Uh-huh.
These men are the sort of repositories of African history in the oral history way. They know histories of family clans back literally into centuries.
Mm-hmm.
And as I say, his name is Keba Kanga Fofana. And when he found that I had descended from the oldest of 3 brothers who were born between 1750 and 1760. This one I descended from, having been brought to this country as a slave. He sent around people to other villages whom he knew were direct descendants of his blood brothers.
Yes.
And then was assembled the people in this photograph who are all direct descendants of 3 blood brothers.
And so
makes
all of those people now in that photograph would be what to you?
Literally, we are all 6 cousins. I'm the one with the necktie.
I wish I'd been there for the family reunion. It must have been
Must
great.
have been fun.
Thank you, Mr. Haley. Thank you, gentlemen, also, for being with us on the Tell the Truth.